I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on Iraq. Missing the point about violence. This week, the Washington Institute for Near East Policy released a long report on the increasing violence in Iraq. Violence which has now taken almost 5,000 lives since the start of 2013. It was an impressive report in part, going into detail about al-Qaeda bombings, about bombings which have been carried out by local militias, talking about the general decline in the security situation. Yet at the end of the day, it was a spectacular failure, because what it did not actually recognize is why the violence is occurring. The report noted, for example, that bombings by al-Qaeda, or to be more precise, groups like the Islamic State of Iraq, have increased sevenfold compared to the same period 3 years ago. It also noted that bombings by local militias in the western part of Iraq around Baghdad have also increased significantly. And then the report went badly wrong, because it notes that part of the reason for this might be domestic Iraqi politics, and then never explains why domestic Iraqi politics has led to an increase in bombings by Sunni groups. Instead, what it effectively says is, well, the problem here is that the United States is not present to cooperate with Iraqi forces. It's not present in the same way that it was up to, say, 2010, when there was a military occupation. It says al-Qaeda was effectively reduced, almost defeated in this period. So one of the reasons why it must be resurgent is because America no longer has a large footprint inside the country. Well, maybe somewhere that is part of the story, but it is only a small part. Let's be very clear here. Bombings do not occur simply because someone decides they are evil or they want to support Osama bin Laden. Violence occurs because of local conditions. And in this case, there is a great deal of anger, especially amongst Sunni groups, at the al-Maliki government, the Shia-led government. For example, the Washington Institute report never notes the death sentence that has been handed down on the vice president of Iraq, who happens to be a Sunni. The Washington Institute report never notes the attack on another minister, killing his bodyguards and forcing him into hiding in December. The report never notes attacks by security forces on protest, peaceful protest, both at the end of 2012 in the west of Iraq and then this spring, killing scores of demonstrators. The report never notes the counterterrorism measures which have been implemented by the government, which have led to detention of hundreds of people, thousands of people on suspect charges. It never notes this local anger at the Baghdad government, because instead it wants to portray a sweeping conclusion. That is, it must always be al-Qaeda, and then it must always be some vague notion of Sunni groups fighting Shia groups. We are never going to get to the heart of understanding Iraq. Let's forget about solving it, unless we actually appreciate what is going on in that country. The story is not one that the United States could have fixed Iraq after 2006, but that it suddenly withdrew. The point is that Iraq was broken. It has been broken since 2003, and it will continue to be broken unless you have a government which commands the legitimacy of all groups in the country. Legitimacy for its political programs, legitimacy for its security services, legitimacy for its economic policies. I'm not saying if the significant minority who are protesting against the al-Maliki government are right or wrong. That is not my place. What I'm saying is that they are protesting, and to ignore that in favor of some diversionary explanation for why the violence is occurring will never get you any further to understanding what is actually happening in Baghdad and beyond, let alone doing something productive about it. I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on Iraq.